West of the Rockies, you're on.
Y2K. How can we prepare?
Their machine radios, throw them into darkness for a few hours.
We're fighting for our lives. We must survive.
5,000 gallons of air filtration, water filtration.
Coming at you from the frozen tundra that is East Central Alberta, Canada, streaming live on YouTube, Twitter, Twitch, Rumble, and Odyssey. Welcome back to the workshop where we create community, find freedom, promote preparedness, and share success. I am Toolman Tim. Today is June the 6th, 2024. This is episode 454 of Workshop Radio. How is everyone out there this evening? We have got a very full episode for you. I'm excited to dive in. It's been great to be back in the swing, to have the show going the way it's supposed to go. Love being back. So first off, we have a dedication for this show this evening. And for those who haven't or didn't hear the news, Mr. Kabosu or Kabasu, depending on how you pronounce it, the dog that inspired the meme, that inspired Dogecoin, passed away this week. And we all love dogs around here. And what a sweet little face. So I wanted to dedicate tonight's episode to Kobasu, the dog that inspired the Dogecoin. So there you go, folks. Everybody pour one out for him this evening. So, all right. With that, we spun the big wheel. And you guys know that it is Thursday evening, which means it is time for This Week in Prepping, and we start out with a rule to live by. So I spun the big wheel. We ended up being rule number 11. Now, this is an odd one. This is one that I tell my kids quite often. Bear with me as I tell you, but short and sweet, always be at least second worst. Now, what do I mean by that? And really what this rule has served me over the years is to not bring undue attention to yourself. I've been able to see this illustrated time after time in the last couple of years running the daycares. And this is what ends up happening is the worst employee or the worst person at their job or the person that is doing the worst job in general always gets the most interest or attention from the higher up. And of course, you're looking down on them. You're always like, okay, you need to do better. Or you're really just getting the short end of the stick because you're not doing a good job. And so, but here's the problem. As soon as that person gets fired or takes themselves out of the equation, what ends up happening? The person who was second worst all of a sudden gets all the attention and they become the worst one. So like I said, always be at least the second worst. I know that seems like a negative. It almost seems to go against what we talk about here, but it is something that I've learned over the years. I'm going to shout out, we are on the vertical shorts feed as well. Hey, man, Pedro Esperanza, great to see you. Freddy's Wonderland, great to see you. Larry Toncray, great to see you. Taha, I'm sorry if I mispronounced that. And thank you. And shout out from Texas, good to see you. We got 28 people over here on the shorts feed right at the moment. And let's come back to the main community over on the regular feed. And we've got David Hosfeld in here this evening. Good evening from Michigan. Rachel Brown says, Rule 11, fly under the radar. Absolutely, I agree. And Byron Roberts says, I fired 4 in 6 months that fit that description. Yep, no word of a lie. True story. That is exactly how it goes. We've been really struggling with a few employees and different things as we go along. And yeah, but again, that's the one that gets paid attention to. Ryan Pippin puts it up here. The nail that sticks out gets the hammer. Yep. And hey, who do we got here? Somebody wants a shout out. Man, we got 54 people over on the shorts. I lost it that quick. Pedro wants a shout out. Thank you, Pedro. Good to see you. Great to see everybody. Sawyer Stepper and somebody trying to use the, oh man, here we go. Anyway, this could be fun. Let's see where this goes tonight, guys. All right. So that is rule to live by. Rule number 11. At least be second worst. And hopefully you can be the best at whatever you're doing, but there you go. All right. So this evening we are going to dive into I don't know. Can we call it my favorite section of the show? So here we are. We are going to go into
If
anyone dies, while you are kept in your fallout room, move the body to another room.
The time has come for Stranger Than Fiction. And I see somebody from Algeria over in the shorts feed. Good to have you. So this evening we are going to take a look at the week that was the news in prepping. So you know where we end up with this kind of stuff. So we talked about Mr. Doge Dog. Good to, sad to see it happen. But I had my show notes all put together this evening for you guys. And I got a message from my good buddy, Chris Dixon. And you guys know him. He is one of the delinquents from the workshop community. And he said, Tim, you got to talk about the water main break in Calgary, which I didn't even hear about. So if anybody over on the shorts or in here had heard about it, let me know. But this was pretty crazy. So early this morning, let's deal with the story first. Let's bring it up here for you. So early this morning, according to globalnews.ca, Calgary activates municipal emergency plan after water main breaks and spurs boil water advisory. This was the worst. Some of the restrictions that I saw on this boil water, the water restrictions were some of the worst I've ever seen. So they advise people not to shower, not to shave, not to run any water using appliances, nothing like that. So let's dive in real quick. City of Calgary activated its municipal plan as the fallout from a water main break the night before continued to escalate. So sometime in the evening between between Wednesday night and Thursday morning, one of the massive main lines that runs through Calgary. And if you don't know, Calgary is basically tied for the biggest city in Alberta, ruptured. And it said right here, the South Feeder main serves 1.2 million people. So what do you do, guys, if you wake up in the morning and you've got no water, or the city is telling you, holy shit, we have no water. We have a plan. We're going to try to fix it, but we don't know what's going to happen. That's what happened to all these folks. And I didn't delve too deeply into the social media end of things, but it sounds like that most of the Calgarians were losing their ever-loving minds because, again, what do? You got babies. You can't bathe your babies. You might not be able to make formula if you happen to have formula. So you need to have a plan in place. This is exactly what everybody in the prepper sphere works toward. Making sure you can take care of these everyday mundane things. It is fun to talk about, some of the big things that could happen to you at some point. But here's the deal. When it comes down to it, you got to look out for the everyday things. That's what I try to teach everybody as I can, is look out for the things that are most likely to happen. And what's more likely to happen than an absolute water main break in the city you live in? And so, I flipped through some of the Facebook posts and different things. But of course, in Canada, news isn't allowed on Facebook. So it's a little bit more difficult to find some of this stuff. But most of the people ended up being lost, not really knowing what to do. There was some good Samaritans in there who were offering, hey, if you need water to make baby formula, if you need to, look after your babies anyway, I'll try to help you. But here's the thing. We know Chris Dixon. He is living in the heart of water restriction country right now. And he has rainwater catchment, right? Here he is right here. He says, Chris Dixon says, if you can't look after the here and now, you'll never get through a big one. Yeah, if you can't get through the small one, forget the big one. You ain't even touching the medium one, dude. This is the problem that a lot of folks end up having. So rainwater storage, water storage, whether that's 5-gallon buckets, whether it's a whole bunch of, 40 packs from Costco. We know this, but man, this is the type of shit that just jumps up and grabs you almost instantly. So be prepared for this kind of thing. I don't care, look after our health. We're going to talk about having a will later on. We're going to talk about, we talk about different times, financial preparedness. People like to talk about some sexy things like maybe EMPs or CMEs or all that. You know what? Whatever. If you haven't looked after water, don't even talk about that shit. But so here it is, the largest city in my province is going on what looks like by tomorrow morning. Anyway, we're looking at 36 hours at this point without any water. So what in the world do? Hopefully you have a plan. Hopefully you had a plan before you started. And of course, most people say, I'll just wait and the government will take care of me. Well, we're going to talk about FEMA a little bit later. Not that FEMA's in Canada, but we're going to talk about FEMA a little bit later. And we're going to see just exactly what we can expect the government to do when shit goes sideways like this. So anyway, had to touch on this early on. I really don't know where else to go with it other than store water. And that's one of the most free preps out there. We know that, right? Turn the tap on. If you're already paying for your water, you might as well stock some away. Rain catchment. I've been toying with the idea, and it may end up this summer. I don't know, but the cabin in Tennessee, we have some water rain catchment that we're working on down there. But I've been looking at putting an underground polycistern here at the house for an extra storage of water. And Mike Avery says, didn't they make it illegal for the United States to have rain barrels like they did in Argentina? So that, guys, here's the thing. There's two things I'm going to talk about there. First, I'm going to say allowed versus able. Just because you're not allowed to store rainwater doesn't mean you shouldn't. But also, that's a bit of a myth. 48 out of 50 states in the U.S. have no restrictions on storing your own rainwater that falls on your own ground. They're a whole lot more restrictive on, say, streams and rivers that flow through your property, but 48 out of 50 states do not have restrictions. So there you go. And yep, there it is. One step closer. Said rain catch is only illegal in certain states, and a lot less states than most of us think. So, and Pippin says, I did not hear this. Heard there was another ship hitting a bridge in South Carolina. Huh. Did not know that. And Rachel Brown says, we are missing some likes. Slap that sucker right in the algorithm. Yes. Right between the algorithms. Yes. Thank you very much. All right. So that's the first story of this evening. That is the water shortage. Well, there's no shortage of water. There's just shortage of potable, clean, drinkable water. But you should see some of the pictures, guys. It is, I don't know if there's anything up here, but definitely a scary scenario. All right. Next. I don't know if you guys heard about this. I touched on this yesterday when I had Jake on the show. Spaacex. This comes from PCMag.com, and Spaacex, our good buddy, Elon Musk, is in the process of launching cellular Starlink service. Now, I absolutely loved my Starlink internet while I was in the woods in Tennessee. It was it was awesome to be able to sit there where you barely had a cell signal and be able to live stream was one of the greatest things. And now they're looking at tying into cell service as well. Again, people are like, well, what happens if the grid goes down? Well, I don't really care about that at this point. I mean, I don't mind, but when it comes down to it, I want backups for everyday life. How awesome would it be to have your internet coming through satellites when the power's out on the ground? All you need, I ran Starlink itself off of a little solar power station the whole time I was out there. So this just gives us another option. And let's dive in a little bit, because it looks like they're, at least early on, trying to play nice and not overstep their bounds with some of the cellular competition. So SpaceX aims to launch cellular Starlink this fall. They revealed the target date in an FCC filing that also urges the commission to loosen restrictions on RF emissions to improve the system's coverage. Yes, this is kind of cool. I like this quite a bit. And Rachel says, if the grid goes out, you have bigger problems. Yep, we all have way bigger problems than what happened to our RRSP now, don't we? Brian Roberts says, I want creature comforts for as long as possible. Yeah, me too. That's exactly it. I use my phone. Like I said, I went to a hockey game the other night. I'm going to do a video on this because the first time I went, I took my great big over-the-shoulder tactical carrying bag, or as Becky likes to call it, my MERS. And it was way too big. You couldn't keep it on your shoulder sitting down because, those seats are small. The only place to safely store it was under your seat, and you were always worried you're going to leave it behind. So the second time I took just an around the shoulder, over the neck kind of chest carry wallet that I got from John Willis at SOE. And that thing was awesome. And what I've realized is, and again, you don't want to be completely contingent on this, but this cell phone is great for a metric shit ton of stuff, including loading a bank card or two into your Apple Wallet and being able to mostly rely on this. Now, I stash some cash in here as well. So just in case I have a backup, but it worked that entire evening at the hockey game without fail. I was also able to load my tickets on there. So creature comforts, are they great? Sure. Could I live without them? Absolutely. At least some of them anyhow. So here we go. Spaacex supports nearly all the Commission's recent SCS order and looks forward to launching commercial direct-to-cellular service in the United States this fall. Here's what's really cool about this. And again, this was a big thing that Jake and I talked last night. This is going to tie into your existing cell phone. Everybody realizes that if anybody's going to use something, it has to, basically, the cell phone is going to be the portal that everything comes in on. So I'm not exactly sure how this is going to work yet. But again, it's going to allow you to completely interact via your cell phone. So it's like another option. So right now there's emergency satellite messaging built into the iPhone. Great. I love it. That is another option that I can use. Now, number 2, how about SpaceX? SpaceX Starlink. I've already subscribed to it. It is now my internet in my shop. So I have it for traveling and that kind of stuff. So it's going to be interesting to see how much more it costs for the cell, but I love having that option. One Step Closer says more competition, always a good thing. And Rachel says, if you have to put your purse under the seat, wrap the strap around the leg so you don't forget it. That's actually a great idea. I could just picture me jumping up to celebrate a goal and friggin' tripping my old ass down the friggin' stairwell. But anyway, that's a whole nother story. So the filing also teases more about SpaceX's long-term goals for the direct-to-cell Starlink system, which will beam internet data to unmodified, that's the cool part right there, unmodified smartphones on the ground, making it a useful way to serve consumers in cellular dead zones. So I haven't completely figured out whether this is going to require a piece of hardware that you can use, or if this is going to allow people, it reads to me like you're just going to be able to use your cell phone and connect to Starlink on the ground without a distributor or a relay. I don't know. We'll see. I could be completely wrong on this, but they said making it a useful way to serve consumers in cellular dead zones. If you guys remember, it was maybe Hurricane Sandy. I can't remember which one it was, but they talked about at the time how expensive it was to come in and replace the infrastructure, the phone infrastructure, the IT infrastructure, because it all washed away. And so a lot of the new suburbs or the rebuilt suburbs weren't getting landline, or I think they were getting DSL, but they weren't getting any landline infrastructure anymore because cell phones had taken over that. So I remember, many, many years ago, one of the big areas for third world countries that couldn't catch up was not having communications because it was just too damn expensive to set up landline phones, in the third world. So then when cell phones came out, all of a sudden they were able to set up cell in so many places they normally wouldn't, because now you don't have to run wiring from this house to this house to this house, every block in the country. All they had to do was put up towers and boom, Bob's your uncle. Well, guess what? Now they don't even need towers, or a lot less of them. Now you can just use the low Earth orbit satellites from Starlink and beam it down directly using an existing infrastructure that already exists. So I don't know. I'm a big fan of this. Elon, some people will take him or leave him, but I certainly appreciate what he's been doing. So here it is. SpaceX currently intends to only provide text, voice, and web browsing through its, you ready for this? This is an important word here, supplemental coverage network. So in other words, right now they're playing it coy. They're like, hey, we don't want to step on competition's toes. We're going to be something different. I don't think it's going to stay there. I can't see it staying there because for me right now, Starlink is better than most of the internet. Actually, Starlink's better than any internet available at my house right now. The only other option I had is fiber, which isn't available on my block, but I could pay $10,000 to have them trench it in for me. Yeah, that's not going to happen. Starlink's great for that. So I'm kind of excited about that. So the filing teases direct-to-cell Starlink, which will beam internet to unmodified cell phones, smartphones. I love it. And they're going to start with voice, web browsing, and supplemental coverage. Future innovations may permit even more robust supplemental coverage service and enhanced features. While this improved service will not substitute for they're playing this up really hard, and I assume this is, to get away from, pissing off their competition and also playing nice with the government. While this improved service will not substitute for terrestrial mobile networks, it would provide an enhanced source of connectivity where those networks do not exist. So that's how you get your foot in the door. You're like, hey, we are going to supply a service to folks who don't have cell service, who have really shitty cell service. So it would be great, again, to be able to have, unlimited cell service at the top of Delinquent's Gully if I need it. I don't particularly need it because now I have I have internet, so I don't really need it that much, but this will be great. I really like the idea behind it. So yeah, here it is, guys. If you can see this little, I guess I'll show, if you can see this little chart right here. And for those on audio only listening to the recording tomorrow or the next day, Starlink satellite network. Look at that, beamed directly from the network, from the satellites down to an unmodified cell phone. Doesn't get much better than that, does it? An across the board aggregate out of band limit, by contrast, will unfortunately undermine the goal of providing robust coverage during emergencies. So here's the thing. Starlink they're trying to play nice with the government, but they're also asking the government to allow stronger signals within the band. So it's not something too technical that we need to get into, but again, it's one of those things that they're going to have to work around in order to do it. And I assume their idea is let's play nice. But think about this, guys. Right. So Dixon says, what is an unmodified cell phone? I hope it means I hope it means what any average Joe would expect from an unmodified cell phone. If I read the term unmodified cell phone, I think an off-the-shelf iPhone or an off-the-shelf Android like these two. If it means anything other than that, then they're being really disingenuous with their marketing and their FCC filing. So if it'll hit directly to it, I'm all for that. If it won't, then all of a sudden the price goes up. The barrier to entry becomes a bigger issue. So I don't know. I'm excited. Here we go. Spaacex and its partner T-Mobile, the first U.S. carrier to adopt the cellular Starlink tech, told the FCC that the radio frequency limit is too constrictive. We already talked about that part, but what I was kind of interested in was the fact that Spaacex wants to partner with T-Mobile. So all of a sudden, T-Mobile could be the cell network that says we now have 110% coverage across the entire nation. How cool would that be? That'd be a neat selling feature. But really, beyond this is just another thing. If you're going in the backcountry or you have, issues somewhere, this is another tool to help you out. It's something else to use. I love it. I'm going to keep my eye on it. If it's available for a reasonable price, I may even test it out. So Mike Avery over on the vertical stream says, with all those solar flares, don't forget to have an underground bunker with a Faraday cage to protect all your electronics. I'm not sure if they're being funny or serious, but if you're concerned about that sort of thing, a Faraday bag, Faraday cage is not always a bad idea. Jake last night actually talked about these kits you could buy on Amazon that would allow you to make your own little bag. You buy the copper woven aluminum foil fabric, and then it comes with copper impregnated aluminum foil tape as well. So kind of interesting. I'd love to give it a shot. All right, let's take a look at the delinquents in the chat here this evening. We got 20 people on the horizontal feed at the moment. It's great to see everybody. All right, we got One Step Closer says, in Honduras, neighborhoods in the capital city were waiting for more than 20 years to get landlines, and then cell service came in and solved the problem. Yep, absolutely. I mean, it's crazy how you sit around and think it's never going to happen. And then all of a sudden somebody comes up with a solution that isn't even an issue anymore. So yeah, I love it. I seen a funny article about a literal, they're a tribe for lack of a better term, basically an uncommunicated with tribe of some sort that kind of got hooked on Starlink internet. So good and bad, who knows where you end up with it. Let's move on, guys. This is going to be a short one. I know it's fun to shit on California, especially the Oakland area, because they're literally losing their baseball stadium because nobody wants to go there. But California in general, guys, no offense to any of my fine folk who live there and want to live there. I get it. You choose where you want to live. But this is an interesting story. This is Oh, this comes from NBCMontana.com. And this is definitely the type of story that inspired this title, Stranger Than Fiction. And here you go. Thieves stealing copper wiring from traffic lights force Oakland to install stop signs. Oh boy. So here you go. Crime so bad. People are now. I'm going to dive into this story just a little bit because it's interesting. They aren't technically stealing the copper wiring as much as they're hijacking the power going to the power lines for homeless encampments. So again, in California's infinite wisdom, their solution to stop homeless people from stealing their power and interrupting their signal lights is to just put up stop signs. They said there's been multiple accidents since then. Holy shit, I tell you. Here you go. City officials in Oakland, California replaced traffic lights at a busy intersection with stop signs after thieves gutted the signal for its copper wire. Okay, so at one point, copper wire was stolen. In place of the traffic signal hanging over the intersection, drivers now see a four-way stop sign. The signal, which previously hung there, reportedly suffered from outages due to frequent tampering with its electrical systems. Residents told the outlet a nearby homeless encampment may be to blame. No shit, unfortunately. Anyway, thieves appear to have attached wiring to electrical boxes near the signal, rerouting power from the signal to the encampment where it powers RVs and other large electronics. Holy shit, guys. What in the world is going on? Now, okay, first off, those homeless folks, I got to pat some of them on the back. That's pretty damn ingenious. We got another story a little bit similar coming up right after this. The fact that they were able to tie into this and power, I mean, it never ceases to amaze me where and when you can find power. You know, I wanted to plug in one of my solar generators, and I peeked around in a Love's parking lot, and it didn't take me very long to find an unguarded power outlet. I ended up using it for a little while, but it doesn't take long. And if you're, if the rule of law has nothing to do with what you're, where you consider your morals, then this is the type of thing you could end up dealing with. And the other problem with this shit is that it's really, really deadly. You get tied into that kind of stuff and nobody's being safe. It's just literal, live power running across whatever they can find. Many, many, many moons ago, you guys have heard that I went to Bible college to be a pastor. And my first year, I took something called extreme discipleship because in 1999, everything was extreme with an X, not with an E. And they took us all over New Brunswick. And then twice that year, we took a 1-week mission trip to New York City. And we worked in an old abandoned hospital called NISM, the New York School for Urban Ministry. And they told stories about how the squatters had lived in this abandoned hospital for years. And this ministry bought the building and they helped the homeless as they could. But the problem is they were trying to rehab this building. And so what they would have to do is, as the homeless would move into other sections of the building, they would have to block off certain sections because they couldn't kick them out and whatever. But I always remember the guy talking about the way they had run power in there. And one of the most sketchy shits I'd ever heard of was, you guys know what drop ceiling is, right? With the T-bars. So it's like everything you ever see in hospitals, high schools, that kind of stuff. Those drop tiles with 8 million pinholes in them, and they're all held up by an inverted T-shaped T-rail or T-bar. Well, some of these homeless dudes had an quote-unquote expertise in electrical, and they energized that T-bar system. So they were able to run power down there so that they didn't have to go and get copper wiring or anything like that. How insane, truly crazy is that? So this reminds me a bit of this. So anyway, I just wanted to share this story. I thought, no matter where you stand on the homeless end of things, I thought it was pretty damn ingenious that they tied into that. But I mean, I don't know. It's such low-hanging fruit to make fun of California. But I really wanted to share this story with you because California or Oakland City's solution was they keep tying into the power line, the electrical lights. So what are we going to do? Let's put up stop signs. Yeah, that works for me. Hey. And if you guys want to see a really interesting story, I'll see if I can remember to post the video. All the links to all these articles are in the description, but I watched one the other day, the United States most dangerous target, and it was in San Francisco. literally every item in there was behind glass or under an enclosed container. So scary. Beth Emily says, I love your stories, Tim. Thanks, Beth. I always appreciate that. Red Flyer Media. Do not forget about our good friend Rebecca, who has designed our new intro and outro. What great shit that is, guys. I love it. I've had so many compliments on that. So thanks again, Rebecca. I love it. Mike Avery over on the Vertical. I saw something there I didn't want to miss. Said, oh, yes. So going back to the Starlink thing, they're trying to get a stronger signal to cut down on latency. Yes. So actually, Elon Musk just announced the other day on Twitter, of all places, that they had the shortest, I hope that's the proper term, the shortest latency or the fastest latency they've ever had. So they're approaching latency of landline DSL, hardwired DSL. They're not quite there yet, but it's, they're getting much, much faster. So it's kind of neat. And Mike Avery says, I think Starlink saves them around $120 billion a year. I'm not sure who they are, but I like hearing that anyway. So, yeah. Whew, man, we got a lot of stories tonight. If you guys want to, peek behind the curtain just a little bit, it's really not that big of a deal. But, 3 or 4 times a day, I'll scroll through Google News. I've got probably 6 or 8 different places that I kind of go to for prepping related news and that sort of thing. And so anytime I find a story that I think might work, I just throw it into a notepad file on my phone. And then I email that to myself the day before when I prep this show. And then I pick, depending on how many stories we have and what kind of time I figure we can fill in, I pick the best ones and the rest go to the cutting room floor. So yeah, there was a few this week. There won't be a segment, Workshop Wasteland. There really wasn't any decent post-apocalyptic pop culture kind of stuff. So there you go. All right, you ready for the next story? This one's fun. This has actually been sitting on my radar for a couple of weeks. And if you heard it already, good on you, but I had to share it. It is the perfect example of making do with what you have, getting by with what you have. This lady here would have fit in really, really well in the hobo culture of the 1920s and 30s. This one comes from skynews.com. Roof Ninja. You guys heard about this? I don't know if you did. Roof Ninja woman found living inside a shop sign. She said it was an old safe spot. In other words, it was well known to her and her family and maybe her associates. The 34-year-old had a coffee maker, computer, bedding, phone, a printer, and I believe even laminate flooring. So if you can see this picture here, guys, I wonder if I can maybe make it a little bigger for you. Now that didn't work. All right, here we go. So anybody in the audio, this is a family grocery store called Family Fare, F-A-R-E. And on the roof, there is a triangle signage thing that is basically just blank space inside. It's not structural, it's just architectural. And there was a door on the back, there was power nearby, and this lady had been living in there, spoiler alert, for just about a year. A woman was living inside a sign on the roof of a Michigan supermarket, told police officers who found her it was an old, safe spot. Now, I've never lived in Michigan, but I've lived in Alberta, Canada, and I've lived in Nova Scotia, Canada. And I want to tell you something. It gets cold there. And guess what? Michigan might as well be Canada because it gets friggin' cold there. I'd like to know how this lady kept herself warm. Apparently, she is a functioning member of society who just chose to live within her means by, living on top of a grocery store. She had been there. The 34-year-old woman who has not been named was found by police in the attic-like space inside the Family Fare sign on the 23rd of April. The woman had been living there for over a year, had a coffee maker, computer, bedding, phone, printer. The sign was estimated to be about 5 feet wide, 8 feet high, and a door that was accessible from the roof. They also put it in metric, but I'm not going to subject you guys to that. Asked how she found the space, and she said it was an old safe spot that was known to her family and a secret to most others. Not anymore, the police said. She stopped short of explaining why she'd been living there for almost a year. The woman, who emerged in black clothing with ski goggles perched on her head, had been given the nickname Roof Ninja. So there you go. True story. This lady found a place that she could live. Now, Austin Seidel says, hey, what's this all about over on the the shorts feed. Good to see you over there. Yeah, so we're taking a look at some of the stranger news stories and trying to take some preparedness lessons out of this. And for this one, this is ingenious. You know, there's a guy named I think his channel is Camping with Steve. He's an Albertan who does, and a lot of people know him. He's got way over 1 million subscribers, and he picks things like this to camp in overnight. And his goal is to do it for a night or two and not get caught. So, you know, maybe this lady did it simply because she wanted to. Maybe she did it because she's like the YouTubers who build forts inside of, you know, toilet paper rolls at Costco and want to see if they can get away with it. Or maybe she was down on her luck and needed somewhere to live. I don't know. I mean, this would fit right in with, if you guys have ever read the book Possum Living, I love that book. It was actually something I almost ascribed to at one time. Not anymore, of course, but yeah. So this is one of those things that she was able to live safely and comfortably within literal feet of being found out on a daily basis. Did it for long over a year. This reminds me of one of the very first stories we covered. If you guys remember that story about the meth head mother and son who lived in an underground bunker beneath an RV lot, like not an RV, like an RV sales building. And I have looked to find a follow-up on that, and there's been no follow-up ever since. It seems like the news is like, hey, the story's interesting, but the resolution never is. So I don't know. This might be a really interesting exercise to walk around the next time you're in a city or a town, and just to walk around and look for an area that you're like, hey, that would be a really great, I don't know, can you call that a bug out location? But somewhere for someone to rest their feet, to get out of the weather, to stay away from people who have the worst intentions at heart. You know, who knows what it could be. But I just thought that this had, you know, post-apocalyptic living space all over it. But really, it's just about being an ingenious instance. They never pressed charges. They didn't even get her name, apparently. Red Flyer Media says lots of buildings have empty spaces that are big enough to live in. Absolutely, they do. After, you know, post-COVID at the moment, and I am not recommending you do any of this, but post-COVID, there has been an absolute glut of retail spaces that have closed down and office spaces that have closed down. Now, here's the thing. You watch some of the videos, you hear about it. For them, it's worth keeping them open and with heat and lights and everything for 10 years until they rent them, simply because that's how the finances work out for them. So this is the type of thing you're probably going to see more and more squatters doing. You know, there was a video on TikTok yesterday. The lady went out back and her water bill had been exceedingly high for the last couple of months. And it ended up that how do you want to put it? So the squatters that had moved into the home next door to her had been stealing her water and who knows what else for many, many years. So here's the thing. Back when I was doing property management for the banks, there was that one place that we ended up having to bust the door down with a sledgehammer. I don't know if I've ever showed you guys that video. I don't even know if it exists anymore, but it was a hell of a time at the time. We went in, and the folks that had been squatting in this business, these are the things they had done. Outside on the sidewalk, the town has one of those, you know, you can reach down in and turn the water on or off. Well, they'd turned the water off on the people living in there because they hadn't paid their bill. They weren't even supposed to live in there. Well, the town turned the water off. These guys were pretty ingenious. They got a long extension bar, and they took a socket that was the wrong size, put it down in there, and hammered it down with a hammer, so that every time the town came to turn off the water, it was simply go back out, put it in, and turn it back on. There was no way the town could actually turn the water off just to that building at that point. So that was number one. Number two, you go out back, and the gas line, the gas company had come in and put one of the locks in place. Well, guess what these guys did? They cut into the line above it, below it, and bypassed the lock. They didn't even haul the lock out. They just bypassed the whole damn lock. And then, of course, so that was water, that was gas for heat. And what did they need? They needed power. Well, in Alberta, just about every business has outlets outside for the employees or the customers to plug their vehicles in, because In the dead of winter, if your car sits for more than a couple hours without heat, you could not be starting it in some cases. So they tied into that power to the butcher shop right next door. So they had power, heat, and lights, and they slept in the basement on mattresses. So they were below ground too. I mean, I've probably mentioned this before, but it would be rather interesting to speak with somebody, and hopefully not in an exploitative way, but I would love to speak to somebody who was homeless or is homeless about some of the hacks and things that they've learned over the years. I don't love when people go out and film themselves helping homeless people out and that kind of, I don't get it, but I sure would love to be able to learn from them. Maybe, I guess that might be the way to put it. So anyway, there you go. Let's see. Hardway, Alaska says, I'm thinking of living in a storage unit if I sell my house until I get some new property. Don't tell the company you're going to do it, because most places it'll void your lease or whatever. You're not allowed to. But, if you're careful and you just kind of pop in, especially the ones that aren't super monitored and maybe don't have an automatic open and close gate, you could probably get away with it for a while, because, man, I'm surprised that isn't happening more, because they are cheap as the day is long. All right, here we go. Last story from the Stranger in Fiction section of this week in prepping. And this one is, this is just a thing to be aware of. And speaking of the government not being able to fulfill what they love to say they may or may not be able to do. Oh, here we go. As busy hurricane season looms, FEMA warns it could run out of disaster cash. Now, if you haven't heard, they're predicting that this is going to be an above average hurricane season, where folks are going to be handling more than the average number of nasty storms. So that could be the truth. That might not be the truth. I don't really care. I'm going to prep. Well, I don't really live where hurricanes are going to affect me at the moment anyhow, but it is one of those things to be aware of. But instead of taking that angle, I'd like to talk a little bit about the FEMA cash shortfall. And this has been something apparently that's been going on for the better part of a decade. With a grim storm forecast ahead, says Yahoo News, the nation's top disaster responders are in danger of running out of cash at peak hurricane season again. FEMA is on pace to run dry by August without congressional action. That could leave Florida and other states staring at massive expenses and slowing recovery efforts if a major storm hits. Now, I've had George Siegel on here multiple times, the documentarian who lives in Florida, who has talked about the need for, an area that we probably disagree a bit on is the need for improved building codes. I still believe that it is up to the individual to worry about things like that, but I'm never going to convince anybody who is higher up than me, and I really don't give a shit about it. However, if someone lives in Florida, you want to have a contingency plan, because I'm going to guess that there are folks who can't even get insurance on their properties. And some folks that probably rely or think they're going to rely on FEMA cash if the storm comes through and finally hits them. I believe it's Tampa Bay that is long overdue. I don't want to jinx it. I don't want to bring bad omens on anybody, but there's some areas in Florida that are long overdue to get hit by a storm. And I hope it never happens, but I would want to have some serious preparations in effect. I would want to do my damnedest to get insurance. And I like Florida. I don't know. It would be a hard one. But beyond all of that other bullshit, what does this article tell us? Don't rely on the government to come and save you. There's not going to be a single, was it Ronald Reagan that said the scariest words in the world are, we're here from the government and we're here to help? Yeah, they're not even going to be able to say that at this point, and don't expect them to come running. So what is the individual in charge of? Our own needs, our own preparations, and to be our own insurance agency, I think. Now, that doesn't mean that, you can't or shouldn't have insurance, because I believe everybody should have all the insurance that they can get. But here's the words that are a little bit scary for folks. FEMA will have to, or probably will need to, switch to prioritizing life-saving, life-sustaining work if funding dwindles. In other words, triage. Economic triage. So we're going to pick the things that either, in most cases, the squeaky wheel gets the grease, or, the certain area that needs votes, or whatever happens. when it comes down to it, if you live in that area, once again, don't expect there to be government money when shit goes completely sideways. And I know I have lots of friends that are in the hurricane area. Just be wary of it, folks. Red Flyer Media says, I am 2 hours inland from the Texas coast, and we have issues when hurricanes hit. Flooding, tornadoes, power outages, and strong winds. And like, I don't want to sit around and, talk about the negative all the time. We're not going to do it, but it's just about being cognizant of where you live. For us here, for me, extreme cold and probably a train derailment with some nasty ass chemicals on it are my two biggest concerns here in Alberta. Now, when I was down at Delinquent's Gully, one of the concerns was tornado watches or tornado Skelly. What there? A little bit of signal. If anybody's over on the vertical feed, we're going to end that one now, just so we're not pulling out too much. But you are more than welcome to come over to the horizontal feed on the YouTube channel. So yeah, we've here we go. All right, so we did. That's where we take a look at the news that affects us as preppers. But I wanted to do, and I don't know if I'm always going to have content where I can share this with you, but I'm going to, this week, we're going to do a segment called Today in Prepping. I can't call it This Week in Prepping. Why? Because that's the name of the show. But here's the story that I wanted to highlight this week. Somebody who may be considered a bit of a folk hero within some of our circles. Yeah, 20 years ago today, I hate the name that they gave it, but they did call it Killdozer now, didn't they? 20 years later, how and why a man went on a rampage through Granby in an armored bulldozer. Homestead twins, good to see you in here. Always love to see you guys in here. So we're not going to talk about this story a whole lot. If you haven't heard this story before, do yourself a favor, go out and read both sides of the story. Watch the documentary that's out there. Listen to some podcasts. But when it comes down to it, there was a dude who was exceedingly pissed off at his local government and decided to weld impregnable sheets of solid steel to the outside of a dozer and went on a rampage in his city. Destroyed a ton of buildings, didn't kill anyone, maybe or maybe not for lack of trying. But either way, this is the type of shit that happens when a dude is pissed off and fed up with being run around the ringer by the government. So for what it's worth, Killdozer happened 20 years ago this week. All right, let's take a quick look back at the community here. And we got Gunfighter Concealment. Great to see you. It says, I live in Central Florida, close to the East Coast. And I will have to say the best in humanity in times of a hurricane more than not. It gives me some hope. And I love to hear that. To back up just a little bit, the nasty water shortage that's happening in Calgary right now with the big water main break. What I was able to find on social media was a lot of people offering to help. And truth be told, at least in short-term bad scenarios like this, I think humanity still wants to help one another. Now, long-term, that's a whole nother kettle of fish that we're not even going to deal with tonight. But I love hearing that, Gunfighter. I remember I had some guys on the show a while back there that the Matter of Facts podcast, they came on to talk about their experience with a hurricane in Louisiana. And it was more of the same, folks helping folks out. So I like hearing that. So anyway, 20 years ago this week, Killdozer happened. That's all we need to talk about at this moment. All right. So with that, let's slide on into.
Now you stay on the back. You stay on the back, and you keep your gun handy. Our country is still full of thieving, murdering.
Get ready. I read it on the internet. All right, so this is I read it on the internet. And what is that, you might ask? Well, most of you probably know at this point, but there's always new folks in here. And this is one of my favorite segments as well. If you don't know what Reddit is, they used to call it the front page of the internet. Some people call it a cesspool. Some people call it a vast suppository. No, just kidding. Repository of information. But either way, it's a really cool place to get a lot of information on topics you're interested in. So each week I go to Our Preppers. That's the subreddit or the forum that is all about prepping. And I pull out one of the top news stories, the top trending stories of the week to share with you guys. And this one comes from Subtotal 9 Guy. And I try to give credit where credit's due so that I don't, if somebody creates something, I'm going to offer them, the praise for doing it. So thank you. And Chris Dixon says that's still my favorite intro. Yeah, I like that one too. It just hits at home, doesn't it? Because we got a few of them thieving, lying patriots here in Canada too, don't we? All right. So this is a boring topic. So you guys can call it quits. No, I'm just kidding. This is just one of those topics that, I've had Letty Lou on to talk about a couple of times, but it's a good reminder because I realized that Becky and I still don't have something completely on paper yet that we probably should. Not having a will is being unprepared for something that is 100% going to happen. Yep, period, hard end, whatever you want to call it, 100%. I'm sitting here waiting for a relative to drop off their pets because they suddenly have no home and no car. This is simply because their common law spouse didn't have a will, and they're in a state that doesn't recognize common law marriages. 10 years of partnership, and they're out on their own. We talk about EMPs, pandemics, and war, but those are way less likely to happen than the grim truth that we're all going to die someday. Please give yourself will and a power of attorney documents updated as needed. Yes, because, Becky and I have had those conversations. You don't want to have those conversations, but we haven't put anything on paper yet. And we've talked about it, and we damn well should. As humans, it's one of those things that we just like to kind of pretend that we don't want to talk about. It's like if you don't admit it, it's not going to happen. But simply put, it's something we all need to talk about. So let's go down and grab a couple of the interesting comments here. Southern AD said, just had this conversation with my parents the other day. Just after my grandma passed, they both told me that if something happened, they wouldn't want to be artificially kept alive. And I told them the same. And then the next person said, put it in writing, ! And that is the truth. Again, Becky and I have shared those exact thoughts with one another. Ocus 424 says, agreed. A lot of people will say whatever in the moment, but when it comes down to legally binding documents, people will get serious about their wishes. It is also to cover yourself in case a sibling or family member that didn't hear them say it don't want you to do it, right? And a little further on, I don't know to what extent they mean this, but me thinking personally is that if I hit about 75, I would personally start to look at whether a DNR, do not resuscitate, would even be a good idea. CPR is great and all, but it's a high risk, last ditch effort that almost always breaks ribs. I have been within moments of seeing it be legally required to be implemented on individuals who I knew would have no quality of life left if we could get them back. In at least one of the states where I work, we must attempt resuscitation unless a DNR is present that meets the following requirements. Signed by a doctor and the patient. Jewelry and tattoos mean nothing. Has to be a form or legally binding document. Has to be physically present during any incident. I have to start CPR even if your family member says you have a DNR. If it can't be found, it doesn't matter. If you're banking on your medical person of attorney or power of attorney, I stress this because it can't just be legal power of attorney being on scene and telling us to stop. They will have to physically have the paperwork telling us that there is a DNR. So just a few thoughts, not to go too far down the rabbit hole, but holy cow, that is something that needs to be talked about on occasion. And finally, Patient War says, I'm an ICU nurse and I see this all the time. Partners of 20 plus years who never thought to get legal paperwork completed. And here's the worst part. They couldn't make any of their own healthcare decisions. Then one of them winds up on life support and the decisions have to be made by a sister they haven't seen in decades or a wife they never actually divorced. Some of these situations are super messed up. I've seen people kept alive on ventilators solely for Social Security checks to keep coming. Heard about that too, and that's a sin. They were going to be The legal wife, a patient never divorced, and the current common law wife got zero say, even though she kept telling us the patient would never want it. So there it is, guys. You've heard about people who have kept their grandparents in a freezer simply to keep getting their pensions or whatever happens. This is the kind of shit too. So make sure it's somebody you trust. Make sure it's, you have legal, medical power of attorney, and make sure you put it on paper. Those are the things. Take 5 minutes and Google, what does it take to make a will that's legally binding in your province or state? That's it. There it is. Yeah. And again, speak of the devil, we're going to talk about Chris a bunch tonight because there's another segment completely due to him. But assign someone you trust to oversee your wishes as well. So yeah, I really enjoy checking out some of these things from Reddit. There's always, they definitely bent toward the practical end of things on Reddit, almost to the point where they look down their nose at any prepper who even talks about the chance that something really bad could happen. But that's okay. I really enjoy the practical side of things. So anyway, there you are, folks. Let's go on from there.
Nothing like eating under an open sky, even if it is radioactive.
Dropping the dime, precious metals. So it's been an active week in the precious metals market. We're not going to talk about that per se, but I found an interesting little article this week. Came from theglobeandmail.com, a Canadian news article site, a news site. Then take them or leave them. But this was something that Becky and I had kind of gotten into just a little bit in the last while. And, Becky has an affinity for jewelry. Me, not so much. So I decided, it's going to sound funny, but she likes things like white gold. So I've, when I get her things now, I try to make sure that it has some precious metals. It's a majority of some sort of precious metal. So here you go. In uncertain times, gold jewelry offers financial security. I like this. As a child, Ahmed didn't understand why her mother, Abdiba Ahmed didn't understand why her mother loved gold jewelry so much. But when her family came under financial stress and her mother sold the gold to keep them afloat, Ms. Ahmed realized the gold jewelry could be a reliable emergency fund. Now, I like this a lot, actually. And it just so happens that I watch a YouTuber called Silver Dragons, and he goes to Harry's Coin Shop on a regular basis. And this week, they talked about finding ways to have the funds to get precious metals that you don't even realize. And this was things like, 100-year-old silverware that you've been keeping that have been collecting dust for whatever. It was broken jewelry. It was, hey, my wife lost one earring, but she's not going to get rid of the other one. These were ways to find kind of an emergency fund or some silver or gold that you didn't think about. Another one was, if you go in to get a gold filling pulled, don't leave it with the dentist. They got to give it back to you. Becky has to get her rings resized. So when she gets them resized, we are going to make sure that we mention to the jeweler or the jewelsmith or whatever they happen to be, we want the pieces of gold that they cut out of the ring. They don't get to keep that. We're paying them to do it. We want the scrap gold back. So there you go. According to a 2023 report, the World Gold Council, this is really interesting, Indian households own approximately 25,000 tons of gold, or 12% of all the gold that's been mined globally. How crazy is that? I know, right? So interesting. I didn't know that the Indian culture was so much into gold and silver, or gold mostly, but let's go on. These gold ornaments, women in India often receive gold jewelry during weddings, births, and festivals. According to the World Gold Council, roughly 50% of India's gold jewelry demand is at weddings. These gold ornaments are a form of financial independence, says a person's name I can't pronounce, director of the South Asian Studies Institute at the University of Fraser Valley. It was something that had been seen as sacred for the young bride as she left her family's home. She took with her an asset, and I would add in there a hard, tangible asset that could be converted into a different type of currency if she was in crisis, she said. We're doing a little bit better for ourselves. We have been buying silver and a little bit of gold since before COVID, so maybe about 5 years. And, hopefully things always continue the way they are. But we look at it as a really nice way of stashing some money away for a rainy day. I really like it. Yeah. And Ms. Ahmed was in high school when her grandmother in Bangladesh needed money for medical expenses. In Canada, her family was struggling financially as well. Her mother was on disability and could not work. Her mother sold the gold jewelry she had accumulated over the years to make ends meet. It helped pay for 2 months' rent. She said, "In my head, I thought it was just aesthetics, but it went from aesthetics to asset accumulation, which is a whole different life." I love that. I thought that was really cool because I am a firm believer. I really want almost everything to have multiple uses. I got a cool flashlight in my battle box the other day. It's what they call a fighting flashlight. But more than that, it's a flashlight that works really, really well. I watched a video from a dude he's all about self-defense. And he talked about a Kubaton, I believe that's what it's called, and he basically laughed at them. It's basically a self-defense stick or whatever that you leave on your key ring. It serves no purpose other than if you ever get attacked. And he's like, if you've never used it, it might as well be useless to you. But he talked about a flashlight, and he said, hey, you get a good heavy flashlight. It could be a self-defense weapon if you want it to be. But here's the deal. It's not going to be that for you. For your chance, almost never. It's literally going to be a flashlight. It's going to be something you're going to use every single day when these old eyes can't see something down in a dark crevice and you're trying to look for it. It's a tool that you grab all the time. And that's the way I look at, and you're going to say jewelry. Well, that's not a tool. No. But for somebody who wants to wear jewelry, a wedding ring or earrings like Morgan Freeman, the myth is, or the story is that he's got, 2 gold earrings that could pay for his funeral or burial if he ever dies in a foreign country where he doesn't have cash with him. That kind of stuff. I love the idea of it not just being a store of wealth, but also something you can wear on a daily occasion or any occasion at all. So yeah, I just like that. And this article here, it was kind of interesting. They actually interviewed the dude that I started buying gold from, or at least the store called Aaron Buys Gold in Edmonton. And then I realized really quickly that their prices were way out of whack and that they were way, way above spot. So I ended up eventually finding Bex in the city, who has the lowest price in all of Canada, unless you're buying tubes of silver, and then it's Costco. So there you go. Gunfighter Concealment says, I have 3 of his silverbacks. Do you have any goldbacks, Tim? When you say his, I don't know whom you mean, but yes, I do have some goldbacks. I love goldbacks. I don't have very many. I haven't bought any from a store, but I did a trade with a dude from within the workshop community a few years ago. I think I have $8 or $9 of goldbacks, and they're really cool. If you guys haven't seen them, I'll dig them out some evening and show you, but they look a lot like Canadian dollar bills, except they're impregnated with actual gold. And on the gold back, it says, oh, okay. Sorry, I got to cut myself off. Gunfighter Concealment, Silver Dragon has silverbacks made. I did not know that. I would love to have my own silverbacks made. Now you got me thinking, because we do have some silver 1-ounce coins coming up here right away. The pre-order ended, but there'll still be lots available for, I think we sold 21 on the pre-order, and I'm having 50 printed. So there's that. Didn't know he had, but anyway, Silver Dragons is awesome. But yes, I do have some gold backs. I traded them with Renegade Butcher way back. And yeah, so I keep them in my safe. They're, they're not worth a ton, but I love them. I think they're more, I wouldn't even call them a collector's item. Like they're just a neat way to have a very, very minute amount of gold. I also really, really love the Zombucks or Zombie Bucks. If you've seen those, they're starting on a second series of them, but I've got the 8 or 10 of the first series of silver ounces, and they're really neat. Okay, where are we going to go from here? All right, let's we do have a segment in a moment from Sunshine Prepper. This will be Willow's last. She has an announcement to make. We'll get into it. You'll see it, but before that, let's cover this week in the workshop, and that is where I share with you folks the things that I have done for accountability and inspiration. I like to hopefully let you guys know some of the shit I've been up to so that you see that I'm not sitting on my ass, not doing anything, but also you might be like, oh, I might try that. If Tim can do it, I could probably do it too. Hey, so last weekend I created an archway between two rooms at the new north location of the daycare. The crazy thing is, guys, that one day's work is going to save us roughly $30,000 a year. And you might say, how in the hell is that going to happen, Tim? Well, let me tell you a quick little story. So when we found this daycare location, it was perfect for us. It was in a previous life, it was an accountant's office, which meant it was a very big building with a whole bunch of small office spaces. Now, we're like, this is going to be perfect. But what we discovered was that the allowable space of kid per room was something like 4 kids for each small room. Now, in every room, that also requires someone to supervise them. So each room was like 4 kids to 1 supervisor. We quickly realized, talking to our licensing agent, she's like, if you knocked out this wall, this wall, and this wall, so roughly 4 walls, you would be allowed to have 10 kids in that same space and only 1 operator. Because when kids are 3 and up or 4 and up, I can't remember what it is, you're allowed 10 kids per 1 supervisor. So we realized really quick that if we took down these doors, we wouldn't have to hire another employee, and we'd be able to have 2 more kids in the same space. So we can go from 8 kids and 2 employees to 10 kids and 1 employee. So my next 5 or 6 weekends, 4 of those are going to be creating archways. So the first one's done. So, sometimes you can make money by not spending money. And I like that. So something completely non-prepping related. Me and my son-in-law, Curtis, ended up going to 2 Oilers games last week, including the one where they clinched their berth in the Stanley Cup Finals. Now, if you're like, what the hell is he talking about? That's okay. It's sports. I don't talk about it very often on here. I don't spend a lot of time doing the whole sports ball thing, but when the local team is, steps away from the Stanley Cup, I'm going to do my best to support them. We had a hell of a time. So anyway, looking forward to seeing them in the Stanley Cup. Hey, Spags Unfiltered. What a great... Love, Bobby. Good to see you in here, brother. What's up? All right. I talked a little bit about it, but my EDC carry at the hockey game was a lot smaller on the second day. I'm going to do a video on it because I really enjoyed doing it. But again, like I told you, I'm a big fan of around the neck. If you don't watch me on a regular basis, around the neck knife with my small little flashlight. And I'm like, hey, why not get an around the neck wallet or satchel in order to carry at these events? And it worked great. Next, we also went, Saturday was a busy day, but we went to the townwide yard sale at Macklin, which is 10 miles away from us. We had a lot of fun. I got a bunch more prepping gear, and I'm probably going to do a video on the prepping haul that I have done at the last 2 yard sale weekends we did. But one of the coolest items, if you didn't see my pictures, was this gas powered lamp from Coleman from the early 40s. And it's an indoor lamp that was made to have a shade. It's wonderful. I'm going to rebuild it and show you guys, but I'm excited about it. If you haven't seen my video this week, I did a power bank video on an Anchor power bank that was the first time I've ever been disappointed with a piece of Anchor gear. Let's leave it at that. Tomorrow, you guys will get an unboxing of BattleBox Mission 111. Pretty good gear in there this month. You'll see. I didn't want to spoil it too much. I've been talking about the flashlight a little bit. I spent the afternoon with Curtis, my son-in-law. I think I might have called him my brother-in-law earlier. I didn't mean to. We knocked out a punch list over at the 12 unit, got a ton of shit done over there, including swapping out, 12 or 13 light bulbs in a single apartment that the guy got kicked out of. So there was that. A little bit of drywall work. We've been trying to fix a hallway light. Oh, guys, I tell you, sometimes it just doesn't go the way you want it. But I ended up having, I ordered parts. Let me back up. I ordered light bulbs for this fixture. Went to put the light bulb in, the holder completely disintegrated. It's old plastic. So I'm like, okay, I'll reorder a proper socket for it. I order the socket. It shows up. The socket's a different shape than the light bulb. I'm like, this has been going on for 4 weeks. So we have 3 lights in this one hallway, and one of them has been burned out ever since. It kind of sucks. I hate not having a light there. It's not a safety issue. To me, it just doesn't look nice. So I decided, screw it. And I ordered, because of course these lights are from the late 90s. You can't get them anymore. So I ordered 3 brand new lights to replace all the lights in the hallway. So that's something that's coming up. So sometimes you just got to cut your losses and say, I'm done dealing with ordering parts. I'm just going to friggin' replace them, because how much time are you really going to waste, right? Earlier this week, I had the honor of being interviewed for a really cool history of radio documentary podcast. I don't have a ton of details on it yet, but the dude found me from the 2 episodes that Carrie Brown and I did on Art Bell, Coast to Coast. It was a real honor. Spent about an hour and a half talking to the guy about Art Bell and kind of the all-night, overnight radio host kind of jam that happened in the late 80s through the 90s and early 2000s. It was a lot of fun. I took Charlotte to a track meet today. She did pretty good. It was the finals of her area. I think she got 4th place in triple jump. So I was really proud of her. But yeah, so that was this week. It was a lot more. So I've been trying to implement Google Calendar into my day-to-day life, and it's working really, really well, where I've earmarked each day to a theme, and then I add the tasks in along with it. And it was so it's working really, really well. And so it's forcing me to focus on very specific things each day. I'm getting bigger things done without letting the little stuff get in the way. And yesterday, my wife, Becky, I don't know why I was going to call her my wife. You guys know Becky. She started a peel and stick tile job on the behind the stove and the bathroom. And I basically finished them for her yesterday. So that was a nice little job too. And Spags Unfiltered said, Coast to Coast is the bomb. Yes, we do miss Mr. Art Bell now, don't we? So, all right. We are going to move on to our segment of the week, Sunshine Prepper. I do have another segment in the bag from Thesia for the Cookbook of the Claps. She's going to do 1 a month to start with. So you guys will see that in a couple of weeks. But let's hop over here. And we will, if you guys don't know Willow, she came to me through mutual friend Nicole Sauce, and she wanted to do something of her own. And so we did kind of an accelerator program to get her started. I offered her a segment space on the podcast, and it's worked out really well for her so far. And you guys will find out here in a moment why she is stepping back for a little while. And it'll make sense when you hear it. So let's let Willow take over.
Hello and welcome to today's Sunshine Prepper News. I'm Willow, the Sunshine Prepper, here to spread a bit of positivity on the unavoidable doom and gloom. I've missed you all the last 2 weeks, more on that at the end, but you're here for the sunny side up of the news. Let's get into it. Today, in part to make up for lost time, I'm going to cover a bit on a bunch of different topics. So buckle your seatbelt and put on your shades and sunscreen, because here comes the sunshine. Of course, that means it's time to get your weekly dose of goofy giggles in, especially since you had a break. Let's do a solid 10 seconds of laughter. All right, 3, 2, 1, go. Okay, I don't know about you, but I feel good after that. All right, I will address first the thing that I least like to address. As time goes on, though, I feel like it's long-term more detrimental to hide from the topic, but American politics, real quick. Gag reflex from the putrid corruption aside, I'm sure you heard Trump was found guilty on all 34 charges. And to be honest, what bit of this I followed, it seemed like a jury of sane peers wouldn't be able to get a conviction, but we're in clown world and I don't know what the heck is going on in New York. I think it'll lose on appeal, but how long that'll take is, I don't know. And at that point, is the process actually the punishment? I don't know. I'm not a big fan of the guy, but it smells fishy. But hopefully soon some of that fish will get cleared up when our legal system is able to provide a firm and just outcome for Hunter Biden. I haven't looked into what his trial is about enough, something about a gun, but I look forward to finding out more about the details and watching how justice plays out. At the end of the day, I think my biggest petty bone is why no one is in jail for the cocaine in the White House. But hooray! Now that that's over with, on to the next topic. Let me refresh your palate with a random nugget of hope, something much more fun. Hope that despite our species' collective assaults on nature, she remains unwavered. There is a new fungus among us. out in the 9th tragic wonder of the world, known as the Great Pacific Garbage Patch. A brand new species of plastic-eating fungi has emerged. It isn't going to make a huge impact, at least not yet, but it's kind of cool. I mean, we got to take whatever wins we can get, right? Nature finding a way to digest plastic feels like a solid win to me. All right, up next, we have the first confirmed human casualty of H5N1 in Mexico. I think it was a gentleman, but they had no former contact with chickens or other animals. And so the current suspicion is on mice. And in New Mexico, so stateside, 11 household mice have tested positive for H5N1. They were in close proximity to infected dairy herds, but there is now a growing concern about mice spreading it. And for whatever reason, that reminds me of a headline on how rats were spreading the bubonic plague in New York only a few short years ago. So woohoo! Bird flu is likely headed to a rodent near you. Up next, there were 3 water mains that broke in Atlanta around the same time. And then I hear a rumor, not confirmed yet, that a suspicious amount of, more than one water mains have recently broken in another major city. Something to keep an eye on. Is it infrastructure sabotage? Or is it just infrastructure aging? Trick question, because it won't matter to you either way if it happens, because you're going to be under a boil water advisory or worse if something like this happens in your area. So make sure you keep plenty of water and filters in your preps. Water is life. It's pretty important. Also, on the topic of water, you may want to check in with your local treatment plant. Some places are starting to switch to chloramine instead of chlorine gas to clean the water, and these things do not off-gas the same. It can have a negative effect on your garden. I'm not sure how much really. It would definitely kill your fish if you tried to off-gas it like it was chlorine gas. So just something to be aware of if you're using municipal water. Okay. Time for the last update, the Sunshine Prepper update. Don't panic. I'm not going away. Well, sort of, but not all the way. So when I started, I was an independent body. And right now I am a host body, a luxury hotel preparing to spawn a brand new human unit. If my awkward jumble of words flew by you, I think in normal person speech, they say, "Hey everyone, I'm pregnant." But who needs normal people if clown world is the new normal? Anyways, to cut straight to the point, I do have to step away from focusing on the doom and gloom for a bit because I didn't last time and all my milk dried up early. It was no bueno, and it was during the formula shortage, so that was kind of stressful at times. I'm also continuing to have the intense all-day version of morning sickness. Is not great. And my body's kind of like, hey, slow down and sleep more. So the hope is to migrate into a sort of bubble of blissful ignorance as much as possible through the end of the year. I'm due in October, so we're a little over halfway through baking this new pie. And while I can't focus on the doom and gloom, that means I can dedicate my focus more to the sunshine. So, yeah, that's the plan. I'll still be over on my new podcast, the Sunshine Prepper Podcast, putting out roughly 20-minute episodes weekly. And so keep an eye out on that and keep your fingers crossed, but don't hold your breath. There's a plan in the works for a few silly Sunshine Prepper Spanish shorts. Have you ever wondered how to say beans, bullets, and band-aids in Spanish, or how to say 2 is 1 and 1 is none? Well, my Spanish-speaking husband and I plan to help the prepper community out with a bit of some edutainment. Is that what you call educational entertainment? Anyways, that is the news, and those are my updates. I love you all so much for being on this adventure with me. I look forward to when I can do some news segments again, but I got to practice what I preach, and this has been Willow.
So I hope you guys enjoyed that segment from Willow. I think the world of Willow. First off, we need to send a big congratulations, a workshop congratulations to Willow, who, as she told us, is with child. I'm excited for her. It's a shame. I loved having her on the show. Hopefully we can keep working with her when she gets back around to doing what she's doing. But make sure you add her over on the podcast feed. But what I think is interesting is so of all the weeks that Willow has done this segment, I would say 90 to 95% of the time, at least one of the articles she talks about is an article that I had in my show notes. And this was no exception. She talked about the water main breakages. And it's funny that Chris messaged me earlier today and talked about it, because I actually had in my notes from earlier in the week, there's been some water main breakages in Atlanta as well. And that's what Willow talked about. So we're definitely on the same page. She will be missed. I just want to say thank you, Willow, for the content you have provided to me, to the sunshine that you've brought to the show. And I hope to see you back around when you are no longer with child. So congrats, Willow. Can't wait to hear all about your journey. And guys, support her in any way you can, her YouTube channel and her podcast. So with that, I haven't named this yet. I'm always trying to come up with new segments for this show, things that fit the vibe of what we're talking about. And this one, once again, we should call this the Chris Dixon Show, because this one also came from a text that Chris sent me last night or the night before. And he said, I believe he opened the text with the exact words of food for thought. And so technically, or at least in the interim, that's going to be the name of this segment, Food for Thought. And he said, basically his text was, I just finished reading 299 Days, 1 Second After, and the Borrowed World series. And throughout that entire series, I never heard any mention of eyewear or glasses for preppers or during the collapse. And I thought, you're right. It's not something that is mentioned almost ever in prepper porn. So I just typed it into Google. And of course, the first article that came up was something from Reddit. So I just grabbed some quick thoughts from a bunch of different sources to share with you, because he's right. I don't remember them really mentioning eyewear. And I want to tell you, that would suck if you needed, glasses and you didn't have them. It reminds me of a Time Enough at Last. If anybody's ever seen that classic Twilight Zone episode, you would not want to be the last man on earth, be a book lover, and not be able to read your books, now would you? So this one here, does anybody have any recommendations for correct eyewear? I had normal pairs. They say are scratch resistant, but scratch nonetheless. When I think about a shit hits the fan situation, if I don't get LASIK and run out of contacts and break my normal glasses, then what? So this was a great suggestion from somebody. First, they said, look into prescription PPE safety glasses. They're what I used for shooting, but now I use them everywhere. Not cheap. My insurance won't pay for them, but they're durable, so it's worth it. Love that idea. Next, somebody says, last I checked Zenni Optical. If you've never heard of Zenni, it's Z-E, or in the Canadian parlance, Z-E-N-N-I Optical. And they sell lots of $6 or $7 glasses. We also deal with, at the moment, I can't remember the name of it. There's a company in Canada that's also available in the U.S. that makes really cheap. Anyway, look for the discount optical places like Zenni. This person said, being half blind, I have a second pair on me, a third in my glove box. I found a slightly out-of-date prescription in my car trunk, another in my fire safe, and so on. In other words, buy a bunch of cheap glasses and keep them. But they said Zenni also sells safety prescription goggles for a good price. And somebody said, if you're in the United States, ask for an ANSI Z87 rated prescription safety glasses. Another quick tip. And they said, well, they're not indestructible. They're designed to protect your eyes from impact and abuse. And they said, I think the only thing that scratched mine was some spall from the gun range. Another great tip. Now, this got me thinking, what did people do before before eyeglasses were an everyday occurrence? So I found a few more little spots here. It said, completely anecdotal, but I have a family friend who moved to the Ukraine in the early 90s following the collapse of the U.S.A. And he reported that glasses were pretty much uncommon in the area where he lived, and many people made do by squinting all the time. Sounds like me every time I'm trying to read the ingredients or the active ingredient in a product. At this point, it's getting bad. Or the instructions on a tube of caulking. How about that? Oh, man. All right. And then somebody else here, this came from Reddit as well. They said, what did people do before glasses? And some people said, I think they just made do. And in most cases, they suffered. The first glasses were invented in Italy in the 13th century. Before this, the magnifying properties of curved glass had been known since the early 13th century, and Arabic sources say that convex lens magnification was studied as early as the 1000s, 1020s. Poor eyesight associated. Now, here's something that I didn't think of, and it's interesting. Poor eyesight associated with farsightedness was and remains the most common eye issue, followed closely by presbyopia associated with age. Magnifying convex lenses help correct this. Before the widespread development use of lenses, people suffering from these afflictions were simply unable to see well up close. At the time, though, here's the big kicker. The literacy rate was less than 5%. Remember, it was almost 40% as recently as 1970. So when it came to reading or writing, few people were even able to do it. So their lack of eyesight for close vision wasn't an enormous thing to overcome. In other words, losing your eyesight, or not being able to read things up close, fine print, has been a byproduct of Gutenberg's printing press. It's been a byproduct of the literacy rates becoming almost 100% in the modern world. And my guess is that it wouldn't be an issue in a post-collapse long-term situation. Now, for us, yes, I think the phone has completely destroyed my eyes over the last few years. But if you went into a post-collapse world where you're not doing a whole bunch of up-close straining to read text or a bright screen, this kind of thing would disappear in a generation or two. But that's not going to help us now, is it? They said, though genes and nutrition may play a role in nearsightedness, education and myopia seem linked, suggesting that when people do a lot of close work, their eyes grow longer. The better to focus up close, but the worse for long distance vision. Some ophthalmologists believe that dim light also exacerbates this effect. Interesting. Hey, so there you go. Back over to the delinquents in the crowd. Chris Dixon says, considering the number for eyeglass wearers in the U.S. alone is 64%, it should have come up a bit. Yes, it should come up a lot more than we think about. That would be a simple prep that most, well, I shouldn't say most, but some don't think about. Rachel, good to still have you in here. Wasn't sure if you'd make the whole episode tonight. She says, I max out my eye insurance and hit all the sales to make sure I have extras. Yes. And also something we did for Charlotte, at least when she was younger, as you outgrow a prescription, save it, because an outdated prescription, at least in my mind, is still going to be better than no prescription at all, right? And Digger says, don't know if it's just me, but over the last few years, it seems to me you just can't seem to get your glasses clean without streaks. Now, I'm going to say sunglasses. I keep multiple pairs of sunglasses. I cannot wear something that gets scratched up. It drives my eyes crazy. It almost makes me a bit motion sick. And I am anal about cleaning my sunglasses when I'm driving. And it is miserable to try to keep those buggers clean. I don't know. I wish there was a better solution for it. If anybody has a good solution, or if there's something that you might be able to apply to them, maybe, I don't know. All I can tell you is that when I bought this new truck, they put an anti-rain coating on the outside of the windshield. I believe it's actually a coating, not just, it may be a peel and stick. I don't know. But I rarely have to use my windshield wipers anymore. So what I'm getting at is, it would sure be nice if that same coating could be applied to eyeglasses, for what it's worth. So, all right. Well, the next segment is...
It's the apocalypse. End of days. The judgment day. The end of the world, my friend.
Let's dig into the community mailbag. So our final segment of the evening is, of course, the community mailbag, where we dig into our bag of mail, and see what happens to pop out. And this week I believe we have, just one rather lengthy email. We're going to quickly touch on it, but this came from Andy C, and it was talking about the de-Googling phone episode I did with Sean. And I wanted to fill you guys in on it. There's some good resources in here, and it was a very well-received episode. I hope you guys enjoyed it. We'll definitely have Sean on again. I'm going to do a review on my de-Googled Android once I've put enough time into it that I can give you a good review. But he said, Regarding de-Googling your phone, Sean was a brilliant guest with a healthy philosophy. Just to add some extra context, options, and resource, he said, I found minifree.org in 2018. It's a UK company that set up LibreBoot, a hardcore online privacy project that started in 2013. Minifree sources old ThinkPads and replaces the BIOS, which is the firmware that initializes the hardware. LibreBoot is the open source BIOS firmware that cannot phone home to Intel. In other words, the PC launches using a free, as in freedom, BIOS running a free operating system. It runs fast, and if you use Tor or Firefox, it will keep your business private from Google. LibreBoot is a deep dive, tech-heavy page. I'm not too technical, so from personal experience, this extract makes it the most digestible. LibreBoot is a community-oriented project with a focus on helping others escape proprietary boot firmware. We ourselves want to live in a world where all software is free, and so LibreBoot is an effort to help get closer to that world. Unlike the big vendors, we don't try to stifle you in any way. And it goes on like free and open source software. So when you see Intel talk about their boot guard, which prevents, it gets into the weeds here a little bit, but Andy just basically wanted to let us know that there are other people out there doing exactly what Sean's trying to do with the de-Googled phone. If you want to look into it, it's LIBRE boot, BOOT.org. So yeah, I like that. I had more from the community this week, but that was the one I wanted to share because I love hearing from folks who really resonate with episodes. And I want to guess that folks really resonated with Jake last night on the show. I know we did a completely out of the ordinary evening episode or early evening episode for you, but it has been well watched so far. So let's put it that way. I enjoyed it. So here's a couple of things, kind of as we close up here, a couple of thoughts for the rest of the week. Tomorrow, you're going to get a unboxing video for BattleBox. So it's the Pro edition that I have, Mission 111. I'm really quite enjoying the gear I've got from them. This would have been my least favorite box so far, but I haven't got anywhere I'm like, man, this is just filler and junk. It's stuff I'm going to use for the most part. So that's coming tomorrow. Sunday evening, I'm going to have an interview with the Everyday Prepper. He's a dude that I met really quickly at Kentucky Sustainable Living. So I can't wait to chat with him. I'm going to be doing that interview from a hotel in Montana because we're going down there for the weekend to pick up an engine block for my brother-in-law. So that'll be fun. And today, while I was I actually went to McDonald's, grabbed a coffee, and did a couple hours worth of work. I did some outreach to some guests, and I got confirmation for late June that I'm going to have one of my guests that I've been trying to reach out to for quite a while. A dude who was a guest on Joe Rogan, a guy who is an expert on some really cool things that I cannot wait. I'm not going to unveil it yet. I'm going to tease it for a little bit longer. So look forward to the announcement on that. It's been somebody I've mentioned. It's not Mike Rowe, so don't get too excited, but it's a damn good get, guys. I can't wait. I keep reaching out behind the scenes to get interesting folks that I can bring on the show for you. Also, as I mentioned in the past, there is going to be some more out of the ordinary timed episodes. I ended up doing Jake's episode as a live simply because Jake was comfortable with that, but I've been giving guests the option to do pre-recorded episodes with me as well to help mitigate some of the issues that I had earlier, with the lead singer of the Mighty Mighty Boss Tones, Dickie Barrett. I really want to give some of my bigger guests the chance to be pre-recorded, and then I will figure out a time where they come in. So you're going to see a little bit difference there, but you're going to get your Saturday. Let's see. You're going to get your Sunday evening show every week for an interview, and you're going to get your Thursday with the This Week in Prepping. So you'll get those, but then there's going to be some pre-recordeds that maybe fit in certain places. Anyway, I just wanted to let you know what I'm doing behind the scenes for you guys. And Mike's Homestead said, how do you know? I was looking up if Mike Rowe had been on Rogan. I'm still working on Rowe, I promise. And I keep mentioning to everybody out there that if you have a connection, make it work for me. I will get an interview with Mike Rowe. Lord willing, and as long as he's still kicking, I'm going to get him some sort of interview that I will bring to you guys because he's my white whale. But either way, this guest is exciting. He's an author, a nonfiction author, and that's all I'm going to say for now, but I cannot wait. I believe it's June 25th, but I got to look to tell you for sure. So that's what we have coming up. Other than that, guys, I hope that your week has been going great. My ass is getting up real early tomorrow morning to take Becky north to the daycare. We had a bit of an accident. A kid actually broke their arm at the daycare today, which I hadn't mentioned. He's going to be okay. It's sad that it happened. It wasn't through negligence or anything. It was just something that kids do. You know, the parents were as okay as they could be, but 4 years in the daycare industry, this is the first time we've had a kid kind of injured, and it really sucked. It broke my heart, and it upset Becky quite a bit. So we're going up early tomorrow morning just to oversee some paperwork and some different things. Yeah, so there you are. I cannot wait. I can't wait to talk to you guys on Sunday evening. If you've got any suggestions, so here's the thing. One thing I love about these Thursday evening episodes, they are becoming more and more community centric. So I have a ton of people who are, sending me suggestions behind the scenes. I love Chris Dixon because he'll just text me up and be like, hey, Tim, you should look at this topic or that topic. But I love getting it from a lot of people. So email's great, therealtimcook@gmail.com. And you can also, you can use the forum on the website. Everybody seems to like the forum at toolmantim.co. I don't talk about that a lot. One other thing I wanted to shout out, again, just because I love this damn t-shirt so much, is the latest from SOE. It's a early 90s neon splatter print, original SOE or SOEoriginal.com. John just makes great stuff, and he just keeps sending me these shirts, and I friggin' love them. So he never asked for anything in return for sending me these shirts, but I believe in companies just like what John does, and I believe in supporting your friends. So give John some support too. So that's it for me this week, guys. I appreciate you. I'm going to get a little bit more done here this evening, and we will see you Sunday. So as always, stay happy, stay healthy, and have a great week.